On August 6, 1945, the world was forever changed when an American B-29 bomber dropped an atomic bomb on the Japanese city of Hiroshima. This was the culmination of 3 years' worth of government spending, scientific discovery, and extensive planning during the Manhattan Project, a U.S.-led effort to develop the first atomic bomb. The Manhattan Project broke many barriers in science, and those discoveries were used to build the world's first weapon of mass destruction. This weapon, called the atomic bomb, killed hundreds of thousands of people and stands to this day as the only time in history when nuclear weapons were used in armed conflict. The Manhattan Project, breaking barriers in science and destruction. After the discovery of the neutron in 1932 by James Chadwick, there were many advances in nuclear science throughout the rest of the 1930s. In 1939, J. Robert Oppenheimer heard about the discovery of nuclear fission and soon recognized that excess neutrons might make it possible to build a powerful bomb. By the end of 1939, Germany had invaded Poland, beginning the Second World War. In response to a letter from Albert Einstein and American intelligence reports of German atomic weapons research, President Roosevelt created the Office of Scientific Research and Development, or OSRD. Its main role was to research uranium's potential as a weapon. In spring of 1940, the OSRD gave physicists Enrico Fermi and Leo Szilard $6,000 to conduct experiments on chain reactions at Columbia University. World War II was raging now, and there was urgency among the warring nations to be the first to develop nuclear technology. On December 7, 1941, Japan attacked the U.S. naval base in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, thrusting the United States into World War II. About a month later, in January 1942, President Roosevelt approved the development and production of an atomic bomb, and the Army Corps of Engineers joined the OSRD. The project was now officially a military initiative, with the scientists who had led the project for years now put in a supporting role. On August 13, 1942, the Manhattan Engineer District, codenamed the Manhattan Project, was formed with the goal of constructing a nuclear weapon to be used in wartime. General Leslie Groves was appointed head of the project and tapped J. Robert Oppenheimer to lead a new Project Y in Los Alamos, New Mexico. This was to be the new central laboratory for research and design, where the uranium and plutonium components produced at separate secret locations would be assembled into a bomb. By the end of January 1943, Oak Ridge, Tennessee, where uranium was enriched, Hanford, Washington, where plutonium was enriched, and Los Alamos were all being constructed as the project shifted from research to bomb building. This shows the sheer scope of the project, with locations in every corner of the country being built with brand new technology and unlimited manpower. Throughout the 1940s, work on the project continued as facilities were built, additional scientists joined the team, and new breakthroughs were discovered. At the end of 1944, the first atomic bomb prototype, named the Fat Man, had been assembled without nuclear material in order to facilitate training exercises. Tinian Island in the Pacific was selected to be the base of operations for an atomic attack, and preparations began to construct a runway and facilities to support a B-29 squadron. The enrichment plants around the country were almost fully operational, and plutonium and uranium started arriving in Los Alamos. President Roosevelt died on April 12, 1945, and President Truman was immediately sworn in. In an example of how secretive the Manhattan Project was, he previously had no knowledge of the initiative and was briefed on the project the day after he became president. After many experiments and tests, the little boy bomb was completed in early May of 1945. In June, after the surrender of Nazi Germany, the interim committee, which was organized to advise the government on nuclear matters, said that the atomic bomb should be dropped as soon as possible, that an urban area should be the target, and that no prior warning should be given. The 509th Composite B-29 Air Wing arrived on Tinian and began preparations for its atomic air raid. The first 2 weeks of July were spent preparing for the Trinity test in New Mexico. The plutonium bomb, codenamed Gadget, was moved to Alamogordo, New Mexico, on July 12th and was detonated from an 100-foot tower at 5:29 a.m. on July 16th, 1945. It was the first nuclear weapon used in history, and the test was the successful culmination of all the work the scientists and others had put into the project for years. On July 26, 1945, the Potsdam Declaration was issued by the Allies that instructed Japan to surrender under the terms it would form a democratic government or face prompt and utter destruction. The Japanese refused. The Little Boy uranium bomb and the Fat Man plutonium bomb arrived at Tinian Island and were assembled. The crews of the 509th Composite were briefed that the weapons they would be dropping would be extremely destructive, but were not told what the weapons were. With no Japanese surrender, on August 6, 1945, B-29 bomber Enola Gay dropped the untested Little Boy uranium bomb 1,900 feet above Hiroshima, causing destruction and death over an area of about 5 square miles. On August 9th, with Japan still not surrendering, the Fat Boy bomb was dropped over Nagasaki, destroying more than 3 square miles of the city. Japan finally surrendered on August 14th, 1945, and World War II was over. The Manhattan Project had accomplished its goal. The project's scientists and numerous other workers had broken a barrier by taking a scientific idea and rapidly building a usable weapon of mass destruction. The weapon had effectively ended the war, but at what cost? No official death toll exists for the atomic bombings, but experts today believe that over 225,000 people in Hiroshima and Nagasaki lost their lives in 1945. This does not include the following years of fallout and radiation poisoning from the bombings. Both cities were completely destroyed. Once the atom was split and nuclear weapons were developed, countries around the world began making them. The Soviet Union's development of the bomb led to a 45-year-long conflict with the United States called the Cold War. Today, 30 years after the end of the Cold War, more countries have nuclear weapons than ever before. The threat of all-out nuclear war will never cease, and it maintains itself as one of the greatest threats to human survival. The Manhattan Project also led to some positive technological advances. These include valuable medical technology, like MRIs and radiation cancer treatment. Nuclear energy is also used around the world as an alternative to fossil fuels, and splitting the atom led to other military technology, such as nuclear submarines and aircraft carriers. The Manhattan Project had a complicated legacy, but still stands as one of the greatest science and engineering undertakings of all time. Over $2 billion, or $30 billion today, were spent. Over 130,000 people worked on the project at its peak, all working in complete secrecy, most only completing their assigned tasks without knowing what it could possibly be used for. Of these 130,000 people, many were top scientists from around the world who came together to fight against the common enemies of Japan and Nazi Germany. These scientists, along with the US, UK, and Canadian governments and militaries, broke barriers at such a speed that in just 5 short years, an obscure idea was turned into a highly effective weapon. The devastating effect of the Manhattan Project's broken barriers shaped World War II, the rest of the 20th century, and international conflicts today. It will forever be ingrained in history as both a testament to what hard cooperative work can accomplish, but also to the devastation we humans can create.